When Megan Carter was thrown out of her family home on her 18th birthday, she had nothing but a garbage bag of clothes and a rusted key she'd kept hidden for years. Her stepfamily had made it clear she was no longer welcome. They had the house, the money, and the future. Megan had nothing except a memory of her grandfather pressing a heavy iron key into her palm when she was 10 years old, whispering, "If you ever need a place to belong, this opens the door." That night, standing in the freezing November rain with $17 in her pocket, Megan remembered that key, and she remembered the address 1847 Oleander Street, the house everyone said was condemned, the house her family had forbidden her from ever visiting. She was about to discover why. 18 years old and shivering on a street corner in Newark at midnight, Megan Carter clutched the black garbage bag containing everything she owned and tried to decide where to sleep. The youth shelter 3 blocks away had a 6-hour wait. The 24-hour McDonald's would kick her out eventually. She had $17, no phone, and no one to call even if she did. 6 hours earlier, her stepmother Diane had stood in the doorway of the house Megan had grown up in and delivered an ultimatum with cold, surgical precision. "You're 18 now, Megan. Legally an adult. You're no longer my responsibility. I want you out. Tonight." Megan's father had died when she was 8. Within a year, her mother had remarried Diane, a real estate developer with 2 sons from a previous marriage, and an ice-cold approach to anything she considered a liability. Megan had spent the last 10 years being reminded daily that she was a burden. The charity case, the leftover. When Megan turned 18, Diane had exactly what she needed, legal grounds to erase her. Megan had tried to argue. "I graduate in 6 months. I don't have anywhere to go." Diane had smiled. A thin, joyless expression. "That's not my problem. Figure it out." And she had shut the door. Now, standing in the rain, Megan reached into her jacket pocket and felt the cold metal of the key she had carried for 8 years. Her grandfather, William Carter, had died when Megan was 10. He had been the only person in her family who had ever made her feel wanted. In his final weeks, when Megan visited him in the hospital, he had pressed this heavy, old-fashioned key into her hand. "This is for the house on Oleander Street," he had whispered, his voice weak but urgent. "If anything ever happens, if you ever need a place, you go there. Don't tell your mother. Don't tell anyone. Promise me." Megan had promised. After he died, Megan's mother had told her the house was condemned, sold to the city for back taxes, demolished, but Megan had kept the key anyway. Hidden in a box of childhood keepsakes, she pulled it out now, turning it over in her trembling fingers. The address was engraved on the bow, 1847 Oleander Street. Megan had no idea if the house still existed. She had no idea if the key even worked, but she had nowhere else to go. The walk took 2 hours through industrial neighborhoods and residential streets that grew progressively darker and more neglected. Megan's sneakers were soaked through, her garbage bag growing heavier with every block. Finally, she turned onto Oleander Street. It was a narrow, forgotten road lined with abandoned row houses, most of them boarded up or half collapsed. At the end of the block, partially hidden behind overgrown trees, sat 1847. Megan stopped, her breath catching. The house was still there. It was a narrow, 3-story Victorian row house, its brick facade darkened with age and grime. The windows on the upper floors were boarded up with plywood. The front steps were cracked, weeds growing through the concrete. A rusted chain-link fence surrounded the small front yard, and a faded orange notice was stapled to the door, "Condemned, no trespassing." Property of Newark Municipal Authority. Megan's heart sank. Her mother had been telling the truth. The house was condemned. But the door was still there, and Megan had the key. She pushed open the rusty gate, which groaned loudly on its hinges. She climbed the cracked steps carefully, testing each one. The condemned notice was dated 2019. 5 years ago, Megan pulled the key from her pocket and slid it into the old deadbolt. For a moment, nothing happened. The lock was rusted, stiff. Then, with a grinding screech, the tumblers turned, the lock opened. Megan pushed the door, and it swung inward with a low, groaning creak. The smell hit her immediately. Dust, old wood, but not decay, not rot. The air smelled sealed, like opening a time capsule. Megan stepped inside and clicked on the small flashlight she'd taken from her stepmother's garage. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating a narrow hallway. To her left, a staircase leading up. To her right, a doorway into what looked like a living room. Everything was covered in a thick layer of dust. But the structure was intact. The floor didn't creak, the walls weren't crumbling. This house wasn't condemned because it was falling apart. It had been condemned for something else. Megan moved slowly into the living room. Furniture sat under white sheets, ghostly shapes in the dim light. She pulled back one sheet, releasing a cloud of dust. Beneath was a pristine leather armchair. She moved to the next, a mahogany side table. Everything was old, but carefully preserved. Her grandfather had left this house exactly as it was. But why? Why abandon a fully furnished house? Why let the city condemn it? Megan climbed the stairs to the second floor. The hallway was lined with closed doors. She opened the first, a bedroom untouched, the bed made with military precision. She opened the second, an office. A heavy oak desk sat in the center, flanked by filing cabinets. Megan approached the desk and tried the drawers locked, all of them. She moved to the filing cabinets, also locked. She was about to leave when her flashlight beam caught something. Sitting on top of the desk, under a thin layer of dust, was a sealed envelope. Her name was written on the front in her grandfather's handwriting. For Megan. Open when you arrive. Megan's hands shook as she picked up the envelope. She tore it open. Inside was a handwritten letter on heavy stationery. Megan, if you're reading this, something went very wrong, and you needed a safe place. I'm sorry I'm not there to help. This house is yours. I bought it in 1985 and kept it separate from everything else specifically for you. Your mother doesn't know about it. Diane doesn't know. No one knows. I paid the property taxes through a private trust for 30 years to keep it hidden. When the money ran out, I let the city condemn it. Condemned property doesn't get sold. It just sits, waiting. Go to the basement. There's a door behind the furnace. You'll need to move it. Behind that door is everything you need. I couldn't give it to you while I was alive, but it's yours now. You were always the strong one, Megan. Build the life they said you couldn't have. Grandpa William. Megan read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she walked back downstairs, through the kitchen, and found the basement door. The basement stairs descended into absolute darkness, the wooden steps groaning under Megan's weight. The air grew colder with each step, damp and heavy with the smell of concrete and old metal. Her flashlight beam swept across the space, revealing a low-ceilinged room with exposed pipes and walls lined with empty metal shelving units. In the far corner sat a massive old oil furnace, a hulking iron beast that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. Megan approached it slowly, her heart pounding behind the furnace. You'll need to move it. She examined the ancient heating system, easily 6 feet tall, 4 feet wide, bolted to the concrete floor with heavy iron brackets. There was no way she could move it, not alone, not without tools. She knelt down, shining her light behind the furnace, trying to see if there was any gap. The beam caught something, a seam in the concrete wall, a vertical line, barely visible, running from floor to ceiling. Megan stood up and walked around to the side of the furnace. The bolts holding it in place were old, covered in rust, but when she examined them closely, she noticed something strange. The rust was only surface level. The threads beneath were clean. Oiled, someone had maintained these bolts. Recently, her grandfather had made sure this furnace could be moved. Megan found a toolbox on one of the metal shelves, covered in dust. Inside was a heavy wrench that fit the bolts perfectly. It took her 40 minutes of hard, exhausting work, her arms burning with effort, but she managed to remove all 4 bolts. Then came the real challenge, moving the furnace itself. She braced her shoulder against the side of the iron beast and pushed with all her strength. Nothing. She tried again from a different angle. The furnace shifted slightly. Maybe an inch. She pushed again. Another inch. The metal scraped against the concrete floor with a sound like grinding teeth. After 20 minutes of sustained effort, sweat pouring down her face despite the cold, Megan had moved the furnace enough to reveal what was behind it. A door, a heavy steel door, painted the same grey as the basement walls, flush with the concrete. No handle, no visible lock. Just a smooth metal surface with a single keyhole in the center. Megan pulled out the key her grandfather had given her, the same key that had opened the front door. She slid it into the lock. It fit. Perfectly, she turned it, and heard the heavy click of a deadbolt disengaging. She pulled, and the door swung open on well-oiled hinges. Beyond the door was a narrow corridor, maybe 3 feet wide, extending back into darkness. The walls were concrete, reinforced with steel beams. This wasn't just a hidden room. This was a bunker. Megan stepped inside, her flashlight revealing a corridor that ran about 15 feet before opening into a larger space. She walked forward slowly, her footsteps echoing. When she reached the end of the corridor and stepped into the room beyond, she stopped breathing. The room was roughly 20 feet square, with concrete walls and a ceiling supported by steel I-beams. But it wasn't empty. The walls were lined with industrial metal shelving units, and those shelves were filled. Wooden crates, metal lockboxes, plastic storage bins, file boxes, and in the center of the room sat a heavy wooden desk with a single item on top of it, a leather-bound journal. Megan approached the desk slowly, as if in a dream. She opened the journal. The first page was a letter, written in her grandfather's precise handwriting, dated 6 months before he died. Megan, if you found this room, you followed my instructions. You're safe now. Let me explain what you're looking at. I was a mechanical engineer for 40 years. I worked in manufacturing, and I was good at it. Very good. I held 23 patents for industrial machinery. When I retired in 1995, I sold those patents to different companies for significant sums. I invested carefully, and I saved everything. Your mother remarried a woman I didn't trust. Diane saw you as competition for her own children. I knew that when I died, she would find a way to cut you out of everything. So I created this, a separate, hidden estate that exists entirely outside the legal system. No probate, no lawyers, no family to contest it. The contents of this room are worth approximately, Megan's breath caught, $3.8 million. Let me break it down for you. Shelf 1 contains investment-grade gold and silver coins stored in climate-controlled cases. Current market value, approximately $1.2 million. Shelf 2 contains rare collectible items I acquired over the years. Vintage tools, antique clocks, stamps, coins. Appraised value, $400,000. Shelf 3 contains stock certificates and bonds that were never transferred or cashed. Value, $600,000. Megan's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the journal. She kept reading. The filing cabinets along the back wall contained the original patent documents for all my inventions, along with royalty statements and contact information for the companies that still owe residuals. Those royalties are currently being deposited into an account Diane knows nothing about. The balance is $890,000. The bank information is in the red folder on the desk. Finally, the crates on the bottom shelves contain personal items. Family photographs, your grandmother's jewelry, and things I wanted you to have that have no monetary value, but mean everything. This house is paid for. The deed is in your name, held in a trust that activated on your 18th birthday. It's been condemned by the city, which means no one will bother you. You can live here quietly, liquidate the assets slowly, and build whatever life you want. You don't need them, Megan. You never did. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you while I was alive, but I'm protecting you now. Build something beautiful. Grandpa William. Megan sat down hard on the concrete floor, the journal falling from her hands. She was surrounded by $3 million in a house no one knew she owned, in a city that thought the property was abandoned. She had spent the last 10 years being told she was worthless, and her grandfather had spent those same 10 years. Building her a future in secret, she was still sitting there, tears streaming down her face, when she heard it, the sound that made her blood run cold, footsteps on the floor above her head. Someone was in the house. Megan froze, her heart hammering against her ribs. The footsteps above were deliberate, heavy, moving through the first floor with the confident stride of someone who knew exactly where they were going. She heard drawers being opened, furniture being moved. Someone was searching the house. Megan's mind raced. Had a neighbor seen her break in? Had the city sent someone to check on the condemned property? Or worse, had Diane somehow found out? She moved silently back through the corridor, pulling the steel door closed behind her, but not locking it. She climbed the basement stairs slowly, each creak of the old wood sounding like a gunshot in the silence. When she reached the top, she eased the basement door open just enough to see into the kitchen. Standing in the hallway, shining a flashlight into the living room, was a woman in her 60s wearing a postal uniform and carrying a large canvas bag. The woman turned. Her flashlight beam caught Megan's face. Both of them jumped. The woman's hand flew to her chest. Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, you scared me half to death. Megan stepped out of the basement, hands raised defensively. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. The woman lowered her flashlight slightly, studying Megan's face with sharp, intelligent eyes. You're Megan Carter. Her voice was certain. Not a question. Megan blinked. How do you know my name? The woman smiled, a warm expression that softened her weathered features. Because your grandfather showed me your picture about 100 times. I'm Dorothy Chen. I was William's mail carrier for 30 years. I'm also the one who's been checking on this house every month since he died, making sure it stays sealed, making sure no one breaks in. She paused. Until tonight, apparently. Megan felt her legs go weak with relief. You knew about this place? Dorothy nodded. William trusted me. He set up a private arrangement. I get paid a small fee every month from a trust account to do a walkthrough, make sure the structure is sound, check for water damage. He told me that one day you'd show up with a key. She looked Megan up and down, taking in the garbage bag, the soaked clothes, the exhausted face. He said when you came, it would mean you needed help. She paused. Was he right? Megan's composure finally broke. She sank down onto the bottom step of the staircase and started crying. Dorothy set down her bag and sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on Megan's shoulder. Let it out, honey. Then we'll figure out what to do. 20 minutes later, Megan and Dorothy sat at the dusty kitchen table. Dorothy had made tea on a camping stove she kept in her mail truck for emergencies. She listened quietly as Megan explained everything. Being kicked out, finding the house, the hidden room. The letter. When Megan finished, Dorothy nodded slowly. Your grandfather was a very smart man. He knew exactly what Diane was. That's why he set this up the way he did. She pulled a business card from her wallet and slid it across the table. You need to call this woman first thing tomorrow. Her name is Alice Tan. She's an estate attorney who specializes in hidden assets and trust law. William retained her years ago to handle the legal side of this. She's been waiting for you to show up. What if Diane finds out? Megan asked, her voice small. What if she tries to take it? Dorothy's expression hardened. She can't. The house was never part of William's probate estate. It was held in a separate irrevocable trust that named you as the sole beneficiary the day you were born. Diane doesn't even know it exists. The city condemned it before William died which means it's off the tax rolls, off the property databases. It's invisible. Dorothy stood up. You stay here tonight. I'll come back tomorrow morning with Alice. We'll get you sorted. 3 months later, Megan sat in Alice Tan's office, signing the final documents that would liquidate the gold and silver coins through a private dealer. The dealer, a serious man named Mr. Levinson, had authenticated the collection over 6 weeks, the final sale price $1.3 million. Alice had also helped Megan navigate the stock certificates and bonds, many of which had split and grown in value over the decades. The total came to $780,000. The patent royalties were transferred into Megan's name, generating a passive income of $4,000 per month. Megan kept the house on Oleander Street. She paid a contractor to quietly renovate it, removing the condemned notice through a legal process Alice navigated. The house became Megan's home. She enrolled in community college, studying mechanical engineering, following in her grandfather's footsteps. With the remaining funds, she established the William Carter Scholarship Fund, providing full-ride scholarships to students aging out of foster care who had nowhere else to turn. 4 years later, Megan stood in the renovated living room of 1847 Oleander Street, now a warm, beautiful space filled with light. She had graduated with honors, earned her engineering degree, and was working at a firm that specialized in sustainable manufacturing. She had never contacted Diane. She had never told her step-family about the house or the inheritance. They still believed she had disappeared into poverty and failure, on the mantel above the fireplace. Megan kept 2 things: her grandfather's letter, framed in simple wood, and the rusted key that had saved her life. Some nights, when doubt crept in, she would read the letter again. You were always the strong one, Megan. Build the life they said you couldn't have. And she had. Not from luck or charity, but from the careful planning of a man who had loved her enough to protect her future when no one else would. Because the most valuable inheritance isn't money. It's the belief that you are worth protecting, that you are worth saving, that you deserve more than the people who cast you aside ever wanted you to believe. And sometimes, the key you've been carrying your whole life is the one that unlocks everything you were meant to become. Megan went from being kicked out with nothing to discovering a $3.8 million legacy her grandfather hid for her. If this story of survival and hidden protection moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe for more incredible inheritance stories. Have you ever kept something for years not knowing its true value? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.